Hi, it's Dina here with a video showing you how I've painted out my tiger. I started this tiger as a drawing on smooth bristolboard paper, but then when I came to frame it I realised I got a great big dirty mark on it which wouldn't rub out. So I sat and I thought I'll paint my picture, and it actually worked out really well. First of all, I went in with the blacks just to put the darks in, and then I would like an underpainting of burnt sienna and white, keeping the brush strokes always in the direction of the hair growth. It really helps keep it looking realistic as far as possible. Just using some greys, a bit of Payne's grey with white and some burnt sienna with white, start adding some depth to the fur. I keep swapping from brush to brush to keep the fur looking fresh and ruffled. I don't want the same brush strokes all the way through, so I swap brushes. I've added some Cadmum Orange into the mix now with that burnt sienna, the white, and I'm just going round and round and round, building up the depth of colour, swapping my brushes. There's some burnt umber going in to add some depth to the fur, and I've also got some Naples yellow by Liquitex Basics, which is that nice soft creamy yellow that you can see there. So it's just a case of keep going and going and going until I get the effect that I'm after. Referring to my original photograph throughout, just to make sure that I'm happy with the colour and the direction of the fur growth. When I checked it again, I realised I'd put too much colour on the face of my tiger, so I'm going in here, just lightening it with some white brush strokes in there to build up that white on his face a little bit more. Now it's time to do his eyes, so I thought I'll just block them out completely with white. So I've got literally a blank slate to start with them, and then we'll start building up the colour into those eyes. I put in a first pale greeny colour into the tiger's eyes. They were a beautiful clear green, but I need to build up that depth of colour into those eyes first. So while I'm waiting for the eyes to dry, I'll just put in a little bit of green onto the grass around the tiger. I'm using a long rigger brush to do the grass. Holds a lot of paint and you can get nice long flowing lines with it. So here I am going in with slightly different shades of green, adding washes over the colours to build up the depth of colour into the eye. You will notice that far eye is far too big at this point in time. I know it's far too big, it should be smaller with the perspective, but I'm doing it that and then I'll block it out again to get the right shape and size later. Just stippling some paint into the nostril area, the nose, to try and get that texture of the skin, and keep flicking it around and having a look and seeing what needs doing where. So here we are, adjusting now the size of those eyes to get the perspective on them correct, and building it up with a very fine brush with some Mars black on it, and then adding white as the contrast colour. Try to put the highlights in so I can build up the structure of the eye. Cats have that reflective layer at the back of their eye that makes the light shine out at night time, so you do get an extra bit of reflection into the iris of the eye as well. So I'm trying to put some of that in. While I'm waiting for the eyes to dry, I'll just go in and tickle up somewhere else with some colour. Now then, to add some depth to my tiger to make him look like a real thing, I'm just putting in some washes, very pale washes. It's burnt umber with a tiny bit of burnt sienna in it, just creating a wash to add some shadows to the form of the tiger underneath. I'm just building those in and adding them in, and putting some through on the hair as well, so the hair looks like it's 3D. We'll just keep again going round and round again, adding more and more and more depth to the fur. It's quite a long process, this. Now looking at my tiger here, I'm beginning to lose the image of what I want to achieve because I haven't got the background in. So I thought, right, I'm going to go in with my background now. I want the background to be very abstract. The original tiger was in an enclosure in a zoo, and he was actually in a big pool of water when I took the photograph, with the grasses in front of him and around him. So I'm just blocking in some greenery, just using big fat brushes and stippling that greenery in all around him. And now I've used a fan brush to create that soft fur, and all it is that white and some burnt sienna and some cadmium orange, and I've just gently brushed it over the top of my tiger. Now I'm going in again and just adding the extra detail, fine-tuning all the little parts. Now I've got the depth of colour behind my paint, so I can put in the top finishing touches. Just going around where the paint's been muddied up a little bit, or where there's something that doesn't look quite right. So it's time to put in the foreground now. I'm using a round brush here with a mixture of just cadmium yellows, ultramarine blue, whites, and a little bit of ready mixed Pthalo Green, and putting in the grasses that are in front of the tiger, so he's actually embedded in the picture. Still fussing with those eyes, still not 100% happy with those eyes, so I'll go in and out of those eyes until I'm happy with them. Putting in slightly more whites again. Once everything's dry and I've got the background in, I can see what needs adding to balance out the picture. Now I'm putting in the tiger's whiskers, as you can see there, just using a round brush there. You can get a very fine tip on a round brush, and then it'll hold enough paint to carry it through into the painting. I thought I just needed a bit more of a contrast with the green at the front, so I mixed up a more yellowy sagey green to put in. Again, it's adding more detail, more depth to the foreground. And it's putting some contrast colours in there. And then I'm just building up that foreground grass. It's very similar to doing the fur, to be honest. You put in one colour, then you put in a lighter, then you put in a dark, and you build up in layers and layers and layers until we've got a nice balanced finished picture. I did mess around with the whiskers quite a bit. I brought them to the foreground, and then I put the grasses back in over the top of them, and then I brought them forward again. So I've cut a lot of that out because it got a bit boring watching me do the whiskers over and over again. Now at this point I thought my picture was finished, and I actually framed it, and I took some photographs of it, which you can see here, and then I started looking at it when it was in the frame, and I was thinking that bush on the right hand side doesn't look right at all. It looks like I don't know, it's pasted on somehow. So I've gone back in and I've altered it. I wanted the tiger to look like he was coming out from behind that bush, and at the moment it just didn't look right at all. So I painted in that bush in much more vivid colours. I made it a stronger shape to make it jump more into the foreground. And I've put in different layers of contrasting greens, some highlights in a yellow using lemon yellow, cadmium yellow, primary blues. And I've brought it down into the foreground quite a bit as well, mixing in some dark blues and some red to really darken that green down to get the shadow. You can see putting highlights in all the time, again building that colour up and putting some of the colour across the other side of the painting as well, so marry the two halves of the painting together. And of course once I'd gone the bush in the front, I'd gone over some of the grass, so then I had to build up the grass again in that corner, and just using different shades of green with blues and yellows, a bit of red, some whites, and building it up, trying to get back to that picture that we had before with that grass in layers going off into the distance behind the tiger. So it's much better now. The tiger actually looks like he's coming out from behind that bush rather than, I don't know, being a disembodied thing in the front of it. So I'm much happy with it now. I hope you liked the video. If you did, then please subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much for watching. Bye now.